Welcome back to Dreamdrop Stories, where bedtime stories get the superpowered treatment. Last time, Spider-Man rescued a kitten stuck on a speeding subway. But tonight, something stranger is happening across New York rooftops. If you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button, so you do unmiss more adventures of your favorite heroes and villains. And now, without further ado, let's dive right into the story. The moon was high in the sky, casting an eerie glow on the towering skyscrapers below. That's when he heard the news report about a series of strange occurrences across the city. People reported seeing entire city blocks seemingly vanish into thin air. Some witnesses even claimed that cars and buildings were seen falling from the sky, leaving massive craters in their wake. Peter Parker, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, had just wrapped up his shift at Midtown High, where he taught advanced science and math courses. He landed on the roof of a nearby water tower, catching his breath. He turned back to the building, realizing that something strange was going on. It wasn't just a roof that had disappeared. The entire structure was gone. And it wasn't just this building either. Once upon a time, in a technologically advanced future, Spider-Man swung through the neon-lit streets of New York City. They had all become victims of the same strange phenomenon. Spider-Man knew that if he didn't stop the signal being sent out from this tower, the whole city could be lost. The man was hunched over a control panel, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him. As Spider-Man watched, the man's fingers flew across the keyboard, sending lines of code flying across the screen. Quickly, he jumped off the tower and onto the roof of the building below. Suddenly, the man looked up, his eyes meeting. A wide grin spread across his face. He had dealt with his fair share of crazy villains, but this guy took the cake. But before he could say another word, the lights flickered and the room plunged into darkness. Spider-Man's spider sense tingled. He could feel danger lurking nearby. Disguised as one of the technicians, Spider-Man managed to infiltrate the tower undetected. "I've been expecting you." Spider-Man narrowed his eyes, but he couldn't take his eyes off the spectacle in front of him. A world of pure digital energy. A world where I am God. With a start, he realized that he was actually standing on one of the city's rooftops, the same rooftops that Pixelator had stolen. Before Spider-Man could respond, the ground beneath his feet began to shake. Pixelator stood in the center of the room, taking in the sight. Acting fast, Spider-Man shot a web line onto a nearby building and swung to safety. They were still missing, but they were now solid once again. Had Pixelator brought them back? But how? Several buildings were destroyed, and many others were severely damaged. But it was getting late and people needed to get home. He used his webbing to secure unstable structures and his spider sense to avoid falling debris. Spider-Man knew that he had his work cut out for him. Remember, even when the villain seems small, they can cause big problems. So be kind to everyone, even those who are different. Until next time, happy dreaming. But he was ready. He always was. With great power comes great responsibility, and Spider-Man wouldn't let New York City down. He watched as the digital landscape collapsed behind him, taking Pixelator and his drone tower with it. What superpower would you use if you were a superhero? Let us know in the comments below. Because the city ignored my genius. "Ha ha!" he exclaimed. "Now I'll make it glitch until they notice me." All hail the great Pic. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. Once inside, he discovered the mastermind behind the operation. The damage was bad, but it could have been much worse. And it was then that Spider-Man noticed something strange. Just in the nick of time, he dodged a falling piece of equipment that came crashing down where he had been standing just a second before. He could feel a strange digital signature pulsing across the skyline, like the city itself was sending out a distress call. As he soared through the sky, Spider-Man could hear the faint laughter of Pixelator echoing in his ears. He remembered the last thing Pixelator had said to him. This is just level 1. The next game starts tomorrow. What did he mean? Was this just the beginning? Then it hit him. Someone was stealing the rooftops. He knew that if he didn't act fast, the entire block would collapse into a digital abyss. The room was in chaos. Equipment was knocked over and sparks flew everywhere. Determined to figure out what was happening, Spider-Man pulled out his tech goggles and tapped them into investigative mode. "This is nothing," he shouted over the din. "Just wait till I show you my masterpiece." It had been transformed into a vast digital landscape filled with flashing lights and scrolling code. Spider-Man could feel his eyes being drawn into the swirling colors. With that, he pressed a button on his control panel. Following the digital trail, Spider-Man swung from building to building, dodging traffic and pedestrians below. Finally, he spotted the source of the signal on the far side of town. Not only that, but there was a pulsating grid of light beneath his feet. It looked like the roof had turned into a giant computer screen. Concerned that the building might collapse, Spider-Man took a step back. But as soon as he did, the ground beneath his feet began to crumble. Determined to find answers, Spider-Man swung into action. As he soared above the city, he noticed something strange. And as he drew closer, he saw that the sound was coming from the rooftop of the neighboring building. Curious, Spider-Man decided to investigate. He swung up to the roof and found a sight that he couldn't explain. On the far side of town, an entire skyscraper seemed to have vanished. In its place was a gaping hole that yawned ominously at the night sky. Alarmed by what he saw, Spider-Man quickly changed course and headed straight for the missing building. As he approached the site, he could hear a faint humming noise. In front of him was a large rectangular structure that looked like a transformer station. But it shouldn't have been there. With a yelp, Spider-Man flipped backward, narrowly avoiding the edge of the hole that had opened up beneath him. Looking around, Spider-Man saw that several other nearby buildings were also missing. As he scanned the area, he noticed that the glowing grid beneath the water tower he was standing on was fading away. Using his web, Spider-Man scanned the ground beneath him. But why? Who would want to do such a thing? And how could Spider-Man stop them? It was a large floating drone tower with multiple arms that stretched out like the legs of a giant tripod. But he also knew that rushing in blindly would put himself in danger. So he decided to sneak in and take a look around. It was a short, stocky man with a goatee and a pair of large goggles perched on his head. But it wasn't just any lines of code. They were the same ones that Spider-Man had seen on the roofs. "So you found my little hideaway," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He quickly shot a web line out, swinging toward the sound of crashing metal. "What is this guy's problem?" Spider-Man muttered to himself as he swung back to where the man who had introduced himself as Pixelator was standing. Pixelator stood in the middle of the mess, his eyes wild with excitement. He knew that if he wasn't careful, he could get lost in this digital world forever. "Isn't it beautiful?" he whispered. He quickly looked back to see that the digital landscape in front of him was collapsing. The digital world was crumbling, and the real world was in danger. As the dust settled, Spider-Man turned back to the city. He could see that the damage was extensive. Finally, as the sun began to rise, Spider-Man stood on a now solid rooftop, looking out at the city. In the distance, he could see the faint outlines of the buildings that Pixelator had stolen. Suddenly, Spider-Man felt a chill run down his spine. Shaking off the uneasy feeling, Spider-Man swung into the night. "This is just level 1, he taunted. "The next game starts tomorrow. And that's our story." I hope you enjoyed this tale of Spider-Man vs. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out on any future Dream Drop stories.